Dear students, welcome back to School Success, my YouTube channel. Today, I'll be starting with another chapter, Across the Border by Sophie Jewett. So let's see what this poem is all about, the summary of the poem, the theme of the poem, and the question answers related to this poem. So let's get started. The poem Across the Border by Sophie Jewett captures the speaker's exploration of a mystical kingdom known as Fairyland. Let's begin stanza by stanza explanation of the poem. Where all the trees bear golden flowers and all the birds are white, where fairy folk in dancing hours burn stars for candlelight. So here the speaker describes the delightful characteristics of fairyland, where every tree blossoms with golden flowers and all the birds are white. So in this magical land, the fairy folk illuminate their dances by using stars as candlelight. In the next stanza, where every wind and leaf can talk, but no man understand, save one whose child feet chance to walk green paths of fairyland. So in this stanza, the speaker portrays fairyland as a place where even the wind and leaves possess the ability to speak, but their language can only be understood by a person who has walked through the green paths of fairyland in their childhood. This suggests that an innocence is required to understand the secrets of this land. In the next stanza that follows, I followed two swift silver wings, I stalked a roving song, I startled shining silent things, I wandered all day long. So in this stanza, the speaker narrates their own experience in fairyland, describing how they followed the flight of two swift silver wings, pursued a wandering song, and encouraged shimmering and silent beings. The speaker spent the entire day wandering through this enchanting world. The next stanza says, but when it seemed the shadowy hours whispered of soft foot night, I crept home to sweet common flowers, brown birds and candlelight. Here in this stanza, the speaker says that as the evening approached and the shadows hinted at the arrival of night, the speaker decided to return home from fairyland. They left behind the magical kingdom and embraced the comfort of ordinary life, symbolized by the presence of familiar flowers, brown birds, and the warm glow of candlelight. So students, this was the explanation stanza-wise of the poem Across the Border. Now let us see the summary for this poem. The poem Across the Border explores the allure of fairyland, where trees bear golden flowers, birds are white as snow, and the wind and leaves can speak. The speaker describes his journey through this enchanting kingdom, following silver wings, encountering silent beings, and wandering all day. However, as night approaches, he chose to return home to the comfort of familiar flowers, brown birds, and candlelight. The poem captures the fascination with the magical and the subsequent appreciation of the ordinary. What is the theme of this poem? The theme of the poem, Across the Border, is a contrast between the magnetism of the magical kingdom of fairyland and the comfort and appreciation of ordinary life. It explores the fascination and wonder of the otherworldly kingdom, as well as the realization that the beauty and familiarity of everyday existence hold its own significance and value. The poem highlights the balance between the desire for distraction and the grounding effect of embracing the familiar, ultimately conveying a theme of finding contentment in both the extraordinary and the ordinary aspects of life. Now let's proceed with the question and answer of the poem Across the Border. What color are the birds in the land the speaker imagines? How is this color different from the color of the birds she finds when she returns home? Answer is the birds in the land the speaker envisions are white as snow, while the birds they encounter when they return home are described as brown. This contrast emphasizes the difference between the enchanting realm of fairyland and the familiar, ordinary surroundings of home. The color of the birds in fairyland, being white, symbolizes purity, enchantment, and a connection to the mystical realm. However, by contrasting fairyland with home, where there are brown birds, it can be inferred that the birds in the familiar surroundings are of ordinary colors. Next question. Who do you think understands the language of the winds and the leaves? The answer is, according to the poem, the language of the winds and the leaves in fairyland can only be understood by one whose child feet chance to walk green paths of fairyland. This suggests that individuals who have experienced the enchantment of fairyland in their childhood possesses the ability to comprehend and understand the language of the winds and leaves. Moving on to the next question. Describe what the speaker does in the imaginary land. And the answer is in the imaginary land of fairyland, the speaker follows the flight of two swift silver wings, indicating a search of something enchanting. He actively seeks out a wandering song to immerse himself in the sounds and melodies of this magical kingdom. The speaker encounters shining and silent beings, implying that he explores and interacts with the magical inhabitants of fairyland. The speaker spends the entire day exploring and wandering through the charming landscapes and kingdoms of fairyland, suggesting a sense of curiosity and wonder. Moving on to the next question. How does the speaker describe the surroundings of a house in the real world? And the answer is the speaker describes the surroundings of a house in the real world as having sweet common flowers, brown birds, and candlelight. This suggests a sense of familiarity and normal life. The mention of sweet common flowers indicates the presence of ordinary everyday flowers. The brown birds implies the presence of typical birds found in the speaker's familiar environment. The candlelight suggests a cozy and comforting atmosphere. Overall, the description tells the contrast between the magical realm of fairyland and the ordinary yet comforting surroundings of the speaker's home. And the next question. How are the two worlds the poet describes in the poem different from each other? And the answer is the two worlds described in the poem, fairyland and the real world, are distinct from each other. Fairyland is portrayed as a kingdom where trees bear golden flowers and the birds are white as snow. It is a place of fascination, sparkling beauty, and magical elements. Every wind and leaf can talk, creating a sense of magical communication. In fairyland, the language of the winds and leaves can only be understood by someone who has walked the green paths of fairyland during their childhood. Fairyland is described as a place where fairy folk burn stars for candlelight, emphasizing a magical and unearthly atmosphere. In contrast, The real world is depicted as having sweet common flowers and brown birds, suggesting a more ordinary and familiar environment. In the real world, there is no extraordinary communication between elements of nature. On the other hand, the real world is associated with the comforting presence of candlelight, suggesting a sense of coziness and familiarity. These differences highlight the contrasting qualities of the two worlds, with fairyland representing a kingdom of fascination, mystery, and extraordinary experiences, while the real world symbolizes the ordinary, familiar, and comforting aspects of everyday life. Moving on to the next question. The poem is titled Across the Border. Based on your understanding of the poem, what do you think the border refers to? And the answer is based on my understanding of the poem, the title Across the Border suggests a symbolic division between two states of being. The border can be interpreted as the boundary between the real world and the kingdom of fairyland, which the speaker visualizes and explores in her imagination. It represents the edge between the ordinary and the extraordinary, the mundane and the magical. Crossing the border implies surpassing the limitations of everyday life and venturing into a realm of fascination and wonder. The title captures the idea of a transformative journey where the speaker moves beyond the confines of the known world and explores the possibilities of imagination and fantasy. Next question. Read these lines from the poem and answer the questions that follow. Where fairy folk in dancing hours burn stars for candlelight, what do you think the dancing hours refer to? Dancing hours in the poem means a special time in fairyland when the fairies happily dance, making the place lively and magical like a fun celebration. Where do the fairy folk get light from? The fairy folk in the poem get their light from burning stars for candlelight. Explain why the fairy folk burn stars. The fairy folk burn stars to create a magical and enchanting environment during their dancing hours. What does preposition for mean in the quoted lines? In the quoted lines, the preposition for is used to indicate the purpose or intended use of the stars. It signifies that the fairy folk burn the stars specifically to create candlelight. The stars serve as a source of illumination for the fairy folk's activities. State the symbolism used in these lines. So there are three stars, candlelight, and dancing hours. Stars symbolize sources of light, guidance, and dreams. Candlelight often symbolizes warmth, comfort, and guidance. Dancing hours, it symbolizes a time of celebration, joy, and partying. Next question. Identify the literary devices used in these lines. Give examples as well. So the first literary device used is alliteration. Example is fairy folk in dancing hours. And it means that the repetition of the F sound at the beginning of the words create a rhythmic and musical quality to the phrase, enhancing its poetic flow. Second literary device used is imagery. Example is burn stars for candlelight. So here the imagery of burning stars to create candlelight evokes a rich and fantastical picture, adding to the mystical and enchanting atmosphere of fairyland. Third literary device used is symbolism. Examples are stars, candlelight, and dancing hours. Here, stars symbolize the extraordinary and magical, while candlelight represents warmth and familiarity. Dancing hours symbolize a time of celebration and joy. And the fourth literary device is metaphor. Example is burn stars for candlelight. So, in this metaphor, the act of burning stars to create candlelight is described. Moving on to the next question. Identify the use of symbolism in the poem across the border and illustrate in 100 words. Answer is in Across the Border poem, symbolism is prevalent, enhancing the poem's thematic depth. Fairyland symbolizes a realm of enchantment, magic, and imagination that stands apart from the ordinary world. White birds symbolize purity, innocence, and the magical nature of fairyland. Brown birds symbolize the ordinary and familiar aspects of the real world. Stars symbolize light, guidance, dreams, and magic. Dancing hours symbolize a time of celebration, joy, and festivity in fairyland. Golden flowers symbolize prosperity, abundance, and beauty. Every wind and leaf can talk symbolizes a magical quality of the land where not only the living creatures but also the elements of nature can hold communication. So, students, this was the poem Across the Border. I hope you understood the stanza wise explanation of the poem, the message conveyed, the theme, all the question answers that have been covered. So please subscribe and like my channel for more such videos and happy learning.